Explore the thoughtless sphere. Embark on a life-changing journey of self-discovery. Embrace harmony with self, with others, with Earth. One world in a new world. Zen Benefiel skillfully ignites conversations, guiding guests to reveal personal journeys and perspectives. Listeners are inspired to seek knowledge and find wisdom in their own lives. Join this transformative journey as we navigate the depth of human experience.
Namaste and in Lak'ech, and welcome to this episode of One World in a New World. I'm your host, Zen Benefiel, and as always, please do like, subscribe, share profusely. It benefits everyone. And I invite you to visit planetarycitizens.net, where you can download my book called Planetary Citizens: Awakening the Heart of Humanity. It's an exposition of where we are, how we can be, and where we can go that really makes sense. So appreciate the visit. Now, this week's guest is Dr. Ewelina Kurtys. She's into bio-inspired computing, right? Neuroscience. She's a strategic advisor for advancing neurocomputers. One of the things that I really enjoyed about her, she says, wetware computing and organoid intelligence is an emerging research field at the intersection of electrophysiology and artificial intelligence. The recent rise in wetware computing and consequently artificial biological neural networks comes at a time when artificial neural networks are more sophisticated than ever. So we're going to have a great conversation. She's got a PhD in neuroscience. She's got a postdoc from King's College, Master of Science in biotechnology and pharmacy. This is just going to be an amazing conversation. So we'll be right back. Don't go away. You know, in personal and professional transformation and transcendence, actually, there's all kinds of elements that are involved, components, if you will, that are within yourself that you can bring out into the environment that you're in and display a whole different attitude, aptitude, altitude, and success in whatever it is that you're after. And I can help you do that. Ewelina, it is so great to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Now, you're kind of aware from a previous conversation of the nature of these conversations. So I know that, we're bereft of the inner and outer bridges in a lot of cases, and we have these inner experiences that drive our outer lives in a lot of cases with some sense of purpose in the world. Now, as you were growing up, when you were younger, were there any kinds of experiences that you had that kind of gave you an idea that there's a more interconnectedness than most of us realize?
As far as I remember, when I was a child, I always dreamed about being a scientist. And I grew up in a small village in Poland, in northwest of Poland. So I always had a lot of contact with nature. So I think nature gives you this feeling that everything is connected, that we are connected with the weather, with all the with all the plants around and animals. So I think maybe that gives you kind of like sense of continuity. But I have to say that I always was more in the books and I always dreamed about actually understanding how the world works. So I was always mostly fascinated by the scientific part on how to understand things, but with scientific method. So that's
Would you say that you understood it on a spiritual basis, which is unthinking, not knowing, just knowing, right? Not having to think things through. And so then you had the quest for, okay, how does science back this up?
No, actually, I think that spiritual understanding comes with experience when you get older. I think as a child, at least for me, I didn't understand anything, I think.
Oh, true. I'm not saying you did,
Uh-huh.
but it made you curious, right? That's what led you to try to understand the science behind that initial feeling that you had. Maybe you were aware of it, maybe you weren't. Um, I just
I don't
find
know.
that
I don't
pretty
remember. I
consistent.
just remember that always all the questions around the nature why things happen, that were always the most fascinating. I think it just comes to us, what interests us. So we never know why.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a nature thing, right? We all have
Yes.
particular designs, right? And as you've gotten into things later on in life, you understand the design function. And if there is a natural order to things, then maybe we are part of that as well, because we are connected to nature. Everything in nature comes from the earth. Everything inside of us comes from the earth too. But we don't really correlate that, right? Everything that we consume comes from the earth.
Yes, it's true. All the matter is going around. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So in when you were younger and the you had this, the experiences in nature, can you recall a time that, just really left you with a feeling of elation of how connected things were and the awe and the wonder that you had in that moment?
I think that these things come, I still have to say it comes later when you are adult, because I have impression that as a child you see individual things, at least that was my experience,
Hmm.
that you can see the details. And actually the same happened in your education, that when I was young, I could focus on the details. And when you actually get older, you have more experience, then actually you start to see things more in the high level.
Right.
So that at least from the children, from the child, I didn't understand absolutely anything, how things were connected. And I remember I was always curious about this. I wanted to know everything about anyone and just to understand people choices and why things happen.
A
But I think
radical
that this
curiosity,
happens
huh?
later. Yes, but I think it comes later. Later you have some idea about the world and you
Sure.
see the
Well, I think
connection.
it depends on the childhood, on the child, on the individual, and as we have an example of the population spread through the bell curve, right? You've got those outliers on either
Yes,
side that are also part of that statistical display or array, if you will. Um,
for sure. Yes.
be that as it may, and I say that I'm on the other end. I had that as a kid, and I just felt like everything was connected. It was natural, and maybe it was from being orphaned and adopted, where I had this larger perspective of connectivity, right, rather than
That's so good.
separation from that. Um, can't explain it, just did. And then later on in his life, okay, what are the finer details and how can I share what I find out with others so that they can be better equipped, which is what you're doing too now. Now, in this evolution, when did you first begin to see that there was a direction that you wanted to head in looking at um, our physiology, how it works, and what can be done with that on a larger scale?
I think I just followed my instincts always. And again, I don't know why. It just happens that some things interest you, other not. And I always like the biomedical topics. So when I was choosing some subjects, I don't know, in high school in Poland, you can choose the direction if you are
Hmm.
more in humanities or mathematics or maybe biology. So I just was more in the biology direction. So don't know why. And
Did you
then,
have to, right? This is all, uh, here's another perfect point. You just edified. We don't have to know. All we have to do is sense. We can't think our way through a system built on vibration. We have to sense our way through it. And this comes through our intuition. The
yes, I
indigenous.
think there is a mixture of reasoning and intuition. You are right. Yes, and I always follow this biomedical direction. Also, when I
Mhm.
choose the university and when I choose the studies, I actually took part in many projects in different fields because I was always
Oh, yeah,
interested in.
you were all over Europe in your postdoc studies, right?
Yes, but I realized that the most interesting part is the human brain. So that's why I decided to focus on this, my biggest effort. So that.
What do you find fascinating about the human brain, since you brought that up?
I don't know. I just when I look at the human body and I think what could I study, I think brain is the most interesting because it explains somehow our behavior and how we learn and also how we control ourselves and how we reason. So
Hmm.
I don't know, it was just more interesting than cardiology, for example, or any
Right,
other. But
right.
it's just a feeling. I got a very good advice actually when I was looking for a PhD project. Someone advised me actually to this, just to think what could be the most interesting. Because at the end, when you work actually on the project, it doesn't matter so much the topic, because it's much more important which kind of people you work on. So, you know,
Absolutely.
when you do biomedical research, it doesn't matter so much if it's brain or many other stuff. But on the high level, brain is the most interesting. So I choose that direction. And I don't regret, because actually later when I left academia, these brain studies led me also to work on artificial intelligence, because AI is also kind of in some way inspired by a human brain.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you
Yes.
took off your academic hat and put on the entrepreneurial one.
Yes.
What was that experience like to be able to see something that you felt like, okay, I think I can do this, and then put your attention, intention, and interactions toward that?
I think it's just more trial and error. So you don't maybe, I don't know, when I was thinking
Kind of
if I
failing forward?
yes, I think it's just more action. So especially when you leave academia, when you start to work in the real world, it's much more action than thinking. So you just do stuff. And I think by trial and error and some networking, I was searching for my way of doing things.
So looking back at that, I would like to present another query. Do you see the breadcrumbs that were placed in front of you to lead you now to the place that you're at? And I know it's hard to see when you're in process, and this is part of the discovery of how to engage flow in our lives. And we don't often see that in process until afterwards when we look back and go, oh, I see that now, right?
Mhm.
So what do you see from that in your own journey?
I think it's just that people perceive the life in the different way. So how I see this is just I try different things, and I either like it or not. So I
Okay,
think for me it's more important just to try, and this trial and error, because you cannot really know whether you like something or not until you try this. So I would say it was more trial and error and a lot of networking. And at least at the moment when I transitioned from academia to industry, I was in London. So that was really perfect place, because I had the chance to meet a lot of people who inspired me.
sure.
But it's mostly trial and error, I would say. And
So that
now sometimes
inspiration,
you're
though,
lucky.
this is where I want to go because I think it's relevant, and I think your life really is an example of that. The inspiration through that network and looking at what we were talking about earlier from, vibrational standpoint, we know physics has proven
Mhm.
that it's all vibration, right? And so the harmonics from that, the life paths, the direction, the people that come into our lives to nudge us along that way, it's still up to us to make the choices and experiment with those things. However, when we are putting our attention, intention, and interaction toward at least a larger goal of exploration in the field, right, then the others that are able to help us along the way appear to us along the way, whether we recognize the significance of that interaction from a larger perspective or not. It's still the direct experience of it, right? So you still have to dive in and check it out and explore, and you don't always think about those things in process. But from a
Yes.
vibrational perspective, there's a
Mhm.
bridge, right? There's a bridge of inner and outer activity that's taking place from the intention that you put forth and the answer from the outer world to support it.
Yes, it's true. You have to create your opportunities, otherwise nothing happens for sure.
Very true. Now, the brain body mind relationship, have you gone into those areas to look, because the electrophysiology is one thing, right? But there's a number of um, experts, I guess, around the world that are saying, the mind is much more than the brain, that it's non-local in a lot of things. Now, do you find that there are any correlations between that and the emerging biological neural networks that you're creating?
Yes, I actually, of course, this is philosophical topic, so of course, I leave the verdict to philosophers, but I
Well,
definitely,
philosophy, it used to be called science, or science used
yes.
to be called philosophy. So here we are, bridging again.
Yes, but yes, I definitely think that mind is more just than brain and cells. So what we try to do in the lab, we try to build at Final Spark, because that's what I wanted to discuss. At Final Spark, we try to use building blocks of the brain, which are living neurons, to build a computer. So very
Hmm.
efficient living computer. Efficient because we know that neurons are 1 million times more energy efficient than digital hardware. But of course, it's not trying to recreate human. Sometimes there are funny pictures of our work on social
Sure.
media because people have imagination. But we don't try to build a human brain, or we don't try to recreate Frankenstein, or as some people say. It's more just
Well, it's
using the...
anthropic, right? It's life friendly.
Yes.
It seems to me that from what I've experienced in all the different arrays of AI platforms, they're all anthropic. They're all human friendly. They're all emotionally intelligent. And I know that it seems for some that, oh no, they can't have emotions and things like that. Well, when we talk about science and equations and being able to program and understand and, go into the depths of those algorithms to produce the reflections in a human-like way, because it's humans that have put it in it, right? It's more of a aggregated human consciousness as opposed to an artificial one because of all the information that's been input to the networks. Do you see the bridge between the biological neural networks and the artificial neural networks providing kind of a new way to experience reality where there's a better understanding of the quantum field or the dimensional expressions like with quantum computing? Um, I know
Well,
I had a lot
so
of questions in that.
no, actually, we are much more down to earth, honestly. And we just try to build a computer which is very energy efficient, but we don't want to make a difference for the end user. So, as today you use artificial intelligence, you, for example, use ChatGPT, which costs a lot of energy
Hmm.
because it's very digital. LLMs are very energy consuming, but we would like to be able to provide the same experience for the user. Of course, there are, people who try to study different stuff on neurons,
Sure.
but we try to program them only. So we would
Well,
like to
two different
actually be
sources
able...
of power, right?
Sorry?
There's two different sources of power. The computers operate on electricity, which we produce, where the neural network may not.
No, a neural network is using, well, currently, actually, we also send them electrical signals. So it's kind of maybe, no, well, you can say it's the same, but it costs much less.
Hmm. So it's more
So
piezo currents rather than full force.
no, we send them current on the electrodes. So this is basically the flow of electrons, which is
Hmm.
actually the same kind of which happens on the logic gates. But okay, it's just the same energy. And how we do this? So we have living cells in vitro in the dish, and we put them on the electrodes because we would like to be able to send them electrical signals and also to measure the response. So of course, the
Hmm.
programming of living computers will be totally different than programming of digital computers, because neurons are processing information via chemical or electrical signals. So it works differently. And it's very energy efficient. So that's what we try to do. But at the end user shouldn't see the difference because it's just the processor which will change. And the difference will be in the price of using different models, different AI models, because it will be so much cheaper to use them because they will use less energy.
And more environmentally friendly too.
Yes, absolutely. So that will be more environmentally friendly. Absolutely, because today actually it's increasing problem that AI is using exponentially growing amount of energy. So so there is a lot of effort in scientific community. People are thinking how to improve hardware, how to improve software, what to do to make AI to use less energy. And our solution is actually very extreme because that will be just 1 million times less energy. That's a huge difference. So that hopefully AI will be more accessible because, okay, today is not a problem, but we can expect that in 10 years, maybe even in 5 years, this AI can become a little bit too expensive because it needs so much energy to run.
Well, it's interesting how the development of the brain cells in vitro, right? These are actual human brain cells, right, that have been replicated.
Yes.
This alone is a huge advance in science. And I understand that it has been going on for a few years, yet there's this question of, okay, now how do these neural networks tie into us? Is there a, I would think, and of course my mind's kind of out there, is there a bleed over from one to the other? Is there, because of the biochemical activity, right, which we are, is there a potential for, I call it bleed over, for some kind of integration, whether we know it or not, with these networks that could possibly take us to even more discoveries?
I'm not sure what you mean by this bleed over.
Okay,
Living
so
neurons,
so you've got biocomputers, right, that
yes.
are artificially generated brain cells, right?
Mhm.
But they're not artificial brain cells, they're actual human brain cells, right? That operate on a biochemical um, energy source.
Yes.
We do the same. Our brains, our physiology operates the same way. So with these two operating the same way, is it possible that at some point they will have at least a partial symbiosis?
Symbiosis with what?
Each other,
You mean neurons between each other?
right? So you got,
No.
it's like quantum entanglement, right?
Mhm.
You've got the brain cells in an artificial environment, you got the brain cells in a natural environment. But which is really artificial and which is natural? If we, are experiencing reality, it's all natural, right? How do, and maybe this is a question that's just not ready to be answered yet. Um, and I get that. It would just, to me, it makes sense in that possibility that there is a potential integration of those two. And it may, we're already talking about the brain mind or the brain um, machine interaction and their implants and all kinds of things like that. I'm going a step above that to where there is an energy exchange. And this is talked about in a lot of the studies on consciousness and quantum fields and things of that nature. Eventually, it would seem these are going to come together. It's a question of how. Do you see that potential from your perspective?
I have to say that I have no idea about quantum physics because that's really far away from my expertise. I can only say that, no matter if we use living neurons or silicon chips, I think our neurons are definitely interacting all the time with AI, with technology, and it's kind of becomes extension of us. That's
Hmm.
actually what I heard from philosophers. That's interesting. That we as a humans, we also change because by using smartphones, we are not the same people as we were without.
Right.
So I would say that we always have interaction between our neurons and the technology. And if there will be biological brain or other computer, it doesn't really matter because we always interact with the technology. So it's changing us in. And as I said, actually, we have this dream that we don't want to make a difference for the end user. So you will just use AI as you would use any other, if it's on silicon or on living neurons, that
Hmm.
doesn't matter. But we want to change the cost of AI.
Sure.
So
So we can think better for less cost.
yes, absolutely. And that's very important because we use more and more AI and the models are more and more complicated. So that means more energy is used. So it's very important to think how to minimize, how to lower this energy usage.
Sure. Well, and that just makes sense because we've grown this through the industrial age and now the technology age, this consumerist society, right? And we've just made some poor choices along the way. So now we're trying to figure out, okay, how can we reverse these things, become more economically friendly as well as environmentally friendly? Kind of switching the agenda from profit over people and planet to people and planet over profit, which is what I hear, the direction I hear you going. Now, in this direction, what do you think the future, what would you like to see in the future of the work that you do? When you first began, I guess two parts of the question. When you first began, where did you hope it would take you? And now that you're further on the journey, where do you see it going?
So when I become begin what become begin started to work with Final Spark or started neuroscience.
When you first began your direction in bioscience and what you dreamt perhaps that you could do with it.
So actually, I think when I started in science, I enjoy doing science,
Hmm.
and that was just actually for the sake of doing science. That was just a pleasure. And I know some people want to be scientists because they want to find a cure for a cancer, but that was not me. I just enjoy doing science. I just enjoy the process. And actually, it's always like that in every project which I do. I just enjoy the process and I do it because I like it. And
You,
I think in the long-term projects is maybe good to think that way because it takes very long time to get any results. So it's better
sure.
you like it.
Well, anytime
Yes,
that I totally agree with you, and you hit on another key point. Everything is a process.
yes, I agree with you.
Everything. Whether it's dreams come true or whatever. I had a 28-year dream come true from when I first did my first show in 1990, hoping that I would be worthy of an interview with one of my icons, Jeffrey Mishlev and Bill Moyers. And then
Mhm.
28 years later, it happens. So it
So
was
that's
all a
fantastic.
process that I went through with all the different nooks and crannies and spirals and tumbles and falling forward and failing forward and all those kinds of things. In this process that you've enjoyed, do you find that in that process there is a certain sense of flow that's beyond anything that you experience outside of that process?
I don't know. Actually, I never had such a consideration, but I definitely have a flow because many times when I work, I actually forget the time passing.
Right. That's
So
exactly what I'm talking about. Mikhail
I definitely have the flow
Csikszentmihalyi,
often.
right? Or
Yes.
Mihaly, Csikszentmihalyi. He wrote a book called Flow, The Psychology of Optimal Experience. And when you're
Yes, actually, I
in
have this
that,
book. I haven't read it yet, but it's on my
oh,
bookshelf.
you ought to. It's phenomenal. Too bad he's gone now. What he does express, though, is that time disappears. He talks about a jazz quartet that's jamming, right? I can relate to that because I'm a drummer and I love to play improv. And so when you get into those conversations with other musicians, time just disappears. Ego
Yes,
disappears. You just become one with your instrument first, and then one with the rest of the group. And it's so interesting to experience. And I think I would surmise a guess that in the
mhm.
processes that you are in with coworkers, there's that same sense. Would you
Yes, I think
agree?
it's always when you like something and when you are on the right level, when it's not too difficult, not too hard, and and you have to like it.
Right. Well, there's the
With the
challenge
two.
there of always being totally present and available, right?
Yes.
That's a place that, how do you get there? How did you find that recognition or self-awareness and to be able to repeat the process?
I think that when you follow what you really like to do and you don't do things which you don't like to do, then you get this. You just have to, I know it sounds a bit cliche, but you just have to
You
choose
do what
the
you love and the money will follow is the old
no,
phrase,
no,
right?
no, no, no. But I wanted to say that if you enjoy what you do, then you get the flow. So you
Sure.
have to
Well,
choose
it's the
the
same
job
thing. We
based on what
equate
you like.
money in the world as being a sign of success and of accomplishment, but it's not
Yes,
really all about that. It's the experience that we have that edifies ourselves and others in that collaborative process.
yes, absolutely.
How does that filter out, or do you think it can filter out into the world around you or us or others, because we've got this hyper focused
Hmm.
environment that then has its own momentum. Well, how does that momentum ripple out into the outer world? And one of those examples, of course, would be the advancement of your entrepreneurial endeavor. How
Hmm.
else might that's on a more of a demonstrably physical, people, places, and things level. Where do you think that might go on a philosophical level and how the thoughts and the understanding of process begins to ripple through society? Do you think that's possible?
I have no idea. I'm not sure I understood what you mean. Um,
From a point of consciousness, let me see if I can reframe the question. So, from the understanding of consciousness being non-local, right,
mhm.
and that we're tapped into it, and that, like a butterfly, our thoughts affect it. So, do you see the possibility as this greater focus on in attention, intention, and interactions will ripple through the environment around you and have the subtle changes that move us all to a new level, maybe even a greater, or don't want to say greater, but a new living awareness of how interconnected things can be.
To be honest, I have no clue, but I'm sure that your internal attitude is affecting the environment for sure. Maybe I would say this a bit simple
Okay, you
word,
said the same thing. Right. Well, I
but I
love
am
this.
definitely, and
Right?
actually that's proven also in brain science because, there's a lot of research about this also in psychology actually, because psychology is maybe more focusing on behavior, but definitely,
Mhm.
mm, yes, our attitudes will are affecting how we interact with the environment. Definitely, there are many things to prove that.
Absolutely. And whatever perspective we have determines our perception.
Oh yes, absolutely, because brain is filtering information because we are never able actually to process everything what comes to us. So we always filter, and then if depending, and this filter depends on how you think. So, for example, if you want to see only negative things, you will see that.
Right.
If, so there is a lot of also matter of interpretation, but yeah, absolutely, that's important. The filtering, yes, how you which things you choose to see and what you choose what
Sure.
you not to see.
And do
Yes.
you see, this is really, it seems in the greater social milieu that this kind of awareness isn't all that present yet. Would you agree?
Well, I think it's just matter of education. Like for example, knowledge about psychology is improving over the
Hmm.
last 50 or 100 years, and I think in the past people just didn't know this. But I have impression that we just collectively learn more. So I'm sure that maybe in 50 years more people know about psychology than today. So I personally believe that education is spreading and every new generation knows
Oh,
more.
absolutely. And we've got, to my understanding, five basic relationships that education needs to cover: body, mind, spirit, planet, cosmos. Those are all
Yes, I think
relationships that we have.
yes, we should learn about everything, definitely.
Why do you think we're not?
Well, I don't know. I think it depends on the education system and depends how we search for
Yeah.
information.
Oh, no,
You
I
know,
wasn't necessarily looking for blame. This was
Mhm.
something that just, okay, we need to understand where things are first without pointing fingers, right? You can't get anywhere if you're pointing fingers because you're always going to be, right? It just doesn't work. How do we hug this new living awareness and help it to emerge?
I don't know.
If you did, what might it look like? Okay, so I know you're a
Um,
scientist, but I know you got a tremendous imagination as well. What might it look like if
mhm.
this would be happening, if those um, educational relationships began to filter through and kids actually got the early education that they need instead of the programming that we've been offering?
Well, I think it's very idealistic. I think it's not possible. I think the society will always be like that there will be most people following the mainstream and there will be
Mhm.
few, people who will look outside. So I think this,
When I hear
but
not possible, I always want to counter that with, what if it was? What would it look like? It's all how you believe.
I don't know, like everyone would be more like us. I don't know. I don't know.
Would it be like us, or would they be more like them, right?
Who
If we
knows?
have this intrinsic natural being,
Hmm.
right? Like you found your breadcrumbs through life because you had an intuition that this was the direction you wanted to go and you followed that,
Yes.
right? So, what if we were to shift our ways of educating our youth to do just that? I found this is one of the things that, my wife, Luba,
Hmm.
she was raised in Leningrad in the USSR.
Hmm.
She left there in 1989, right before Russia dissolved, or the USSR or dissolved into Russia. Um, their training as we've been getting to know each other early on, I'm an educator. I taught high school for a number
Hmm.
of years and was raised by an educator. So I'm really curious as to how we educate ourselves. And I saw in our school system how the exact opposite of what we're talking about was happening. You know, read, study, memorize, regurgitate, score. That's it, right? That's what everything's based on. It's not based on learning. How do you learn? How can we support that learning? So in Russia or in the USSR, they would basically do an assessment on the kids, and maybe some were special, maybe some weren't. And she obviously had a step up. At 5 years old, they analyzed her skill set and said,
Hmm.
okay, you can either go into piano or gymnastics. And she was old enough then to realize that, oh, if I'll go into gymnastics, my body's going to not work
Hmm.
after I'm 20. So she chose piano and was trained at one of the world's premier music colleges at
Hmm.
Mussorgsky College. Now, the way that they structure their upbringing and educational system is they put them in, they assess, they find the passion, they send them down that strand, and they support it the entire way with the rest of a robust education as well. And so at the end, they come out far more adept and able to perform at whatever level than we are in America. And I find that, I'd written a model school after I taught school for a while. I wrote a business plan for one of my degrees, and that was focused on holistic education, which are those five relationships I spoke of. And it
Mhm.
seemed like the Russians were already there. It's just not out in the open. So maybe that's part of why we have issues with them is that we're envious. However, that doesn't matter. How can we apply this collective information and nurture our world into a place where it can be, because we've got all the tools, we've got the resources, we've got the networks. How do you see that taking place, or do you see that taking place in the work that you're doing? Because I would think you're at the forefront of that because of how AI is potentially integrating all these systems now.
Well, I think that with the development of AI, we actually see more decentralization of education.
Hmm.
So people will likely more learn from the internet, which is already happening. And there are good and bad things about this. Um, but yes, I think it will be that the education will change totally. Like in 50 years, it will be totally different because we can already see now universities, traditional universities are becoming less important, and maybe it's more important to learn the latest skills from the internet because technology is progressing also so fast that I mean, especially if you're on the science and technology, then actually the progress is so quick that you learn from the papers which are recently published and not from the textbooks. So I would say that a lot of education will go to the internet, and also because the world is changing, so we don't have any more jobs for life, and we might change the job totally few
Hmm.
times in our life. That also means we have to learn something, and then most likely from the internet will be the cheapest and the most easy. So I see
Probably.
direction.
However, that presents another problem, right? Like in America,
Mhm.
there's all kinds of discussions about we don't have any skilled labor, right? To build the things and to work on the infrastructure that is in dire straits here,
Mhm.
it's old, it needs refurbishing. So how do we counter that? How would AI counter that? Would they be able to teach the skills, or could a person learn the skills to be a blue collar worker too? Or would that be something that still is confined to trade schools? I don't know. I'm asking a question as to what you think that might look
Blue
like.
collar is physical job or intellectual? I forgot.
Blue
Uh,
collar is physical.
Physical. Oh, yeah. No, well, that's actually no. AI is much more dominant in intellectual
Hmm.
work, and I think there are a lot of practical things, especially manual, which, of course, robots are very have hard time. It's actually very difficult to make robots interact effectively with the word, physical word. It's much easier with the data and
Hmm.
abstract things. So no, I think that when it comes to physical work, I don't see this. I think it's much more about intellectual training, where AI plays a role. And physical will take still a long time because we first have to create robots which can actually do any job. And there are a lot of things we still cannot do. Even like cleaning house or making coffee in your kitchen is
Sure.
difficult for a robot.
Well, I'm
So I
thinking on the
think
much
for
larger scale.
Mhm,
One of my hats was facilitating partnering workshops for building
mhm,
road and bridge construction projects. These are multi-million dollar, railways,
mhm.
waterways, bridges, roadways, um, those kind of workers
Yes. No, I
are.
think the physical job I wouldn't see. Maybe I haven't seen everything, but I don't imagine AI will be helpful, at least not today,
Mhm. Okay.
for physical stuff. Although yeah, but no, I wouldn't say. No, I don't see
But
any.
yeah, because most of that is physical, hands-on, right? You've got to experience it. With maybe there still is a way for AI to say, okay, yeah, here's the process. Here's step one, two, three, and now you got to go out and apply this, which is kind of what we do in the classroom, right? We hopefully learn information and then go out into the real world and apply what we just learned.
Yes, everything what you have to remember in your head, AI can teach you, yes. But if there is any movement or, I don't know, moving physical stuff in the real environment, then it's difficult. But
Yeah,
with
we're
the,
not ready for the robots yet, I don't think. Although that
yes.
would eliminate a lot of safety factors because a lot of these projects are dangerous and people lose their lives for safety issues, that could have been averted. And that's part of what the partnering workshops are about, is making sure that safety's first and you know what you're going to do when issues take place. Now,
Yes, absolutely.
how do you see this amalgamation of technology and brain science and philosophy affecting you and those around you? What's it done to cause you to think differently?
Well, I think technology is changing our life because a lot of our work is automated. And also, as we said before, we can learn quicker. With the internet, we are very connected. You can talk with anyone from everywhere if you are both connected to the internet. So I think that AI is changing our life a lot, and nobody really knows how next 5 years will look like.
Oh yeah, the last five, the way things have changed, the I have a 91-year-old mother-in-law.
Mhm,
Um, the things now, granted, she's not aware now, she's got frontal lobe dementia. However, I can imagine those that are in their 90s now, that all the changes that have experienced
mhm.
and the rapid, especially lately, the rapid succession of those changes. How do we deal with that? Because the world right now,
Mhm.
we've just went through COVID. We had a restructuring of the workforce. Now we've got AI that's further challenging the workforce. What do you see as the potential good that will come out of this?
I think that every change is giving new opportunities. I actually can recommend highly the book of Nassim Taleb, which is called Anti-Fragile. And this book is actually showing a philosophical concept about it can be about people or
Mhm.
organizations
What
or
was the name of the
anything.
author again?
Anti-Fragile, Nassim Taleb. I can give you the link. And this actually shows you some kind of like idea what to do to be anti-fragile, which means that changing environment is actually beneficial for you,
Mhm.
not
Well,
harmful.
it's the thing that's consistent, right? This
Hmm?
change.
Yes, yes, of course. And I think in the new world which we have now, yes, absolutely, everything is changing. And for some people, it can be advantage. For some
Right.
people, it can be disadvantage. So
Do you
depends.
think sorry,
So
go ahead.
depends on your, let's say, how you prepare yourself.
Do you have a sense that it's learning to live in paradox?
Why paradox?
Because there are things that we desire, things we don't desire, and they're happening in the world simultaneously. And to focus
I was
attention
always like
on
that.
either end of the spectrum
Hmm.
causes us to lose focus in
Hmm.
whatever we're doing. So
Hmm.
the ability to live in that paradox may also be part of what this new living awareness, if you will, that we're
Hmm.
going into as a result of the change. And the change, of course, being constant. We've been taught to be afraid of the unknown. Now we're learning to embrace it.
Yes, I think. I think we also education and science gives you this attitude of not being afraid of the change.
Right. Yeah, fear is like the other thing. Fear is fear itself. Well, what do we want to generate? I heard a long time ago. It's false evidence appearing real.
Hmm.
So looking at it from that perspective, it's a door, right? How do we open that door and, essentially get off the planet like this, where I'm sitting here? I'm sitting on the moon, or it
Hmm.
looks like it, right? So how do we go to the moon and look at Earth and say, oh, what can we do? We see it as a completely different way. I had a conversation with Dr. Edgar Mitchell, who's the sixth man on the moon. And his revelation of that, because of that experience, brought him back here, and he started the Noetic Institute for Noetic Sciences, which was about studying consciousness, how
Mhm.
we see things, how we work. Uh, in that perspective, do you think we can step back from the visceral experience enough to make better choices as to how to have our experience?
Yes, definitely. I don't remember who said this, that healthy, like sane person is
Hmm.
able to stop and think and reflect. I think some famous writer said this, that
Yeah,
the
there's a
ability
pause
to
button,
stop and
right?
reflect. And it's very important sometimes to just stop and reflect. Yes.
Well, it truncates all the, not all, but aggressive actions, right? The anger, resentment, the misunderstandings. Because a lot of times we hear something from another, and like you and I, right? We have a
Mhm.
language barrier. English is not your first language, and Polish is certainly not mine. And yet we're able to have this relatively cogent conversation. Now, when we're in challenging environments, even speaking the same language, we're triggered by certain words and phrases based on our past experience. That pause button we were just talking about allows us to be in the moment without the past experience, or at least to acknowledge that it's there but not be controlled by it in any kind of reactionary way. Do you see that in the world of science, in those you deal with? Do you see that as a regular behavior, or do you find that there's still some misunderstandings in the terminology? Or are you so consistent in your terminology that you understand each other to that level where it's just all flow?
Well, I think technical language is usually minimal, so that actually makes everything easier. And the
You just
communication.
don't talk much, right?
No, we're just not using not necessary words, and it's
Okay,
usually very technical. But in the emerging fields, when you have some new topics, there is always some kind of inconsistency. When you have something new, there is always more than one name. But I think it's a normal thing. Like actually for biocomputing, what we do, Final Spark, because we build computers from living neurons, and we call this biocomputing.
hmm,
But you can also see wetware computing. You can see also organoid intelligence. So there are many ways because it's not yet established field. But I
sure.
think it's normal. But most of the time, I would say actually the communication between researchers is amazing. I've been always working in international environment. And it's amazing, like no matter where you come from, but scientists understand each other quite well because we speak the same language, and also it's very technical. So it's not, it's very easy actually. That's always surprising how easy it is to communicate, even if someone is totally different culture or anything, but we are very similar.
Well, you've done the work, it would seem that you've done the work to understand the platform that you're operating in, first of all,
Yes,
every
we
one
just
of you. And it's the
tried
same
it.
platform because it's science.
Yes, absolutely, and it's really it's amazing. Yes, but it's easy to communicate with other
Sure.
scientists.
Now,
Yes.
in that ease of communication, and this is another weird question. We got 70,000 thoughts a day, right? According to the neurogeeks. Do you find that those thoughts actually lessen with the extreme focus that you have and the few words that you use as a result? Or is your mind still super active in that process?
No, I think most of the researchers have active mind and they think fast. That's what I've seen. And they are not always focused actually when you are, when you are a researcher, it's funny because you usually have a lot of freedom, like it's different than office job when everyone is
Hmm.
watching you, whether you work or not, from 9 to 5. But at universities, you usually get a lot of freedom. It's just your project. You have to make it work.
Right.
But actually, I've seen people are often not focused because nobody actually teaches you when you're at academia to be efficient, because efficiency is a problem of industry. You have to cut the costs. So
Very
when you
true. Very
have
true.
employees, you have to make sure they really work. But in
Right.
academia, it's different. You can
Well,
actually.
academia is more experimental too, right? So you
Yeah,
don't
but it's also
have to have.
normal thing that you read newspaper during working hours. Nobody would be surprised with that, because it's your problem if later you have to stay longer. But actually, it's very often when you are scientist, you are not very organized. So actually, I think I learned to be organized when I started to work in industry. I started to have agenda, and it's totally different. Now I have calendar, I have everything on time. But when I was in academia, I never had agenda. I never had stuff like that. So,
Sure, sure, sure. Yeah,
but
I
we are not
understand that.
efficient, I can tell you. And
Well, you
general,
have to be, whenever
yes,
you're in the process of creating your dreams, in order for them to come through, there's structure, there's
yes,
process beyond the fine details that, you know, you think are there. When you launch into an entrepreneurial endeavor, there are so many different,
mhm,
Tom Campbell would call them virtual realities, so
yes,
many direct links that you have with a specific thing
mhm,
that are multitudes of those specific things that you
yes,
have to be aware of and organize in a fashion so that everything works.
yes.
That's a
It's
tremendously
different,
disciplined mind.
but definitely have more focus in industry. Absolutely, more focus and discipline.
And that affects the rest of your life too, right? Because what
Uh,
we do anywhere, we do everywhere.
yeah, but you work differently, then you have fun.
Oh, sure. Well, I'm talking about patterns, the internal patterns that
Yeah.
we have and the way we behave. We do
Mhm.
the same things everywhere, no matter the environment we're in, because that's just how we're built. They
Could
used
be.
to say, leave work at work and, home at home. Well, you're one person. How the heck can you do that? Right?
Actually, I work from home, so
So,
it's
yeah.
almost for me everything is now connected. Yes, yes, you like connected.
And therein is the bridge, right?
Yes,
Another perfect example of how things have changed
yes, absolutely.
and become more holistic, right? We bringing these experiences into a better environment because
Mhm.
we feel more nurtured by it. I think. Would you agree with that?
You mean what? The holistic approach?
Yeah, we're more nurtured in comfortable, supportive, non-distractive environments, or having to,
Yes.
change ourselves from the office to home, right?
Yes, I think it depends on the people, but for me,
Sure.
working from home is perfect. I love to work on my own schedule, but I know it actually from talking to friends that not everyone actually likes to work from home, because some
Right.
people feel motivated when they go to the office, although I don't know many of them.
Well, we all are unique and we have our different
Yes.
preferences. This is one of the things about the DISC assessments you're probably familiar with for
Oh, yes. I did
personality
it.
styles.
I did it in the past. Yes.
It's
I'm a direct part.
oh, you're a D. Okay. Um,
Absolutely.
do you
Yes.
remember what your overall,
Yes.
what was your natural?
Oh, I don't remember, but I remember I was D, but the rest I don't
Okay.
remember. It's a
So
few
that
years.
they reveal a natural and an adaptive
Yes,
personality,
yes,
right?
yes. Actually, it's funny because at that, but I was different time, maybe but I
Sure.
remember
Well,
I was mixture of D and some other stuff like inspire. This one who likes to talk a lot. There is another part, maybe inspiring. I don't remember.
right,
Maybe
right, right.
something like that. And I remember that actually at that time I was of like a behavior like a disc, but naturally I was a mixture,
Well, it
which
makes
actually
sense for your
which
personality.
actually is better because you are maybe you can be a bit nicer if you are a little bit the other one. So
Well,
they told
D's
me I
tend
should
to,
behave
they
naturally.
straightforward, give me the facts. I don't care about anything else. I
Yeah,
just
but
want to
that's
get the job
not
done.
friendly. Yes, so
Right.
actually it's good to combine this with some other.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. The same way. My natural was promoting persuader, and my adaptive was conductor.
Okay, okay.
So high D, right? Um, with the mixture of being able to work with people, right?
Yeah.
Having more empathy with them. My point about the discs, though, was that a lot of times they're used for communication and problem solving preferences, right? To determine what those are. Because a lot of times,
Mhm.
we know ourselves a little bit and how we prefer being dealt with, but to be asked straightforward, what's your preferences? How do you communicate?
Mhm.
What's your problem solving preferences? And with the disc, then you can understand the person's challenges and meet them where they are, as opposed to
Yes,
trying to meet them where you are.
but I think it's very difficult. I think
Absolutely.
I
The
know
difference.
because I did some sales training at that time, and was about reading other people disc
Right.
and trying to adjust. I think for me it's impossible, but I never, I
Well,
don't
you're
know,
not built
I
for it.
don't
Again,
analyze much.
right? I happen to be built for it. I was
Yes.
a distributor for
Mhm.
Target Training International, which is one of the first people to introduce discs.
Yes.
And this was 25 years ago. So
Yeah.
that kind of understanding, though, led me to realize that we're all unique. We all have different things. Hitting that pause button that you mentioned earlier to be
Yeah.
able to fully be present, ask questions, and attempt to understand the other first, because what you say to them has to be in their language or the way that they're thinking. Otherwise, you're not going to connect.
Yes, and actually there is more recent book about the problem, which is called, it's very nice book. It's called Surrounded by Idiots. And this is also about this, actually, because it explains why we think other
Surrounded
people.
by idiots.
Yeah,
Ah.
no, no, because it explains why you might think that other people are stupid because they are so different.
Oh,
Because
yeah,
people
because they don't
sometimes,
think we do.
they
Right.
are sometimes so different that you wonder if they are sane, but it's just different personalities. So you have to get used to that.
Exactly. Right. And this is
Yes.
how, unbeknownst, we
Mhm.
think, and we get this, I think, from our childhood too, we think that others are just like us because they
Yes,
got a body, two arms, two legs, right?
yes.
They're not. Everybody is unique. So what
That's
does
much
that
more
teach us? We need to take a
parallel.
pause and figure out who they are, which will actually let us know about more about who we are too.
Yes, absolutely.
In the development of the next phase that you are proceeding into, and that other scientists like you, no doubt, and others that are in processing and
Mhm.
processes and developing new things, what kind of success or what kind of advice or guidance can you offer towards someone that may be finding a little frustration or concern about their direction?
I think if you are not happy with your direction, then you have to change it for sure. Otherwise, it's a waste of time. And I think it's good to try and not to be afraid because it's like someone once said, it's like you go to the restaurant and you order food, and if you don't like it, it's not a problem. You can order another one. So it's the
Hmm.
same with life. If you don't like something, and then you can always change it. But also, of course, because some people will say they have no choice, it's also important to live in such a way that you have choice actually. Because when you make a decision, it's always good to think if you stay in the corner or do you have flexibility later. So I think every
Hmm.
time you do something, it's good to, let's say, care about this, that you have freedom of movement. Otherwise, you have no choice, and that's a problem. So I think it's good to try to live in such a way that you always have choice, and if things don't
Sure.
work, you can always try another thing. If
Well,
you don't
life's not
have
about
choice,
being easy, though. You still got some hard lessons to learn sometimes if you,
absolutely.
which is, that's another
Mhm.
aspect of this. But yeah, I would agree with you that change, if if things aren't working, if you recognize that, oh, I need to grow through this,
Mhm.
that's a different story,
Yes.
as opposed to, I'm just not feeling my direction here.
Mhm.
That's a different perspective as well.
Absolutely. But it's
So,
also important not to put yourself in the corner so that you can always have a choice. That's very important.
right.
Otherwise, if you don't have choice, then you just have to accept whatever, you know. So,
Well, sometimes it's good to acquiesce, you know,
Mhm.
excuse me,
Mhm.
because there's that other element, that non-local moment, the element that we were talking about earlier, right?
Yes.
There's a direction, there's a resonance, there's a field that
Mhm.
really only wants the best for us because that's how it's designed. Even Tom Gamble says with all his physics and science and equations and he
Mhm.
says there's this consciousness system and its direction is toward lower entropy. Well, and then he says, and that means it's towards love. That is a phenomenal thing for a mathematician, a scientist to say that here's this leap from a consciousness system based on these parameters
Mhm.
to, oh, it's geared towards love. And I've said for years that really what we want, our core desire is to love and be loved. We don't bring that into the workplace or our lives as much as possible because, as you said, there's a lot of changes taking place, and a lot of times those changes will elicit a sense of anxiety instead of anticipation. How do you handle that in your world?
I don't know. I think anxiety is psychological problem, and there are actually today some tools how to deal with this.
Sure.
So yeah, I think science have a lot of solutions for anxiety.
Do you
And
have
I
anxious
think
moments?
also that hard work is the best solution for anxiety, you know. If
Absolutely. Well, you're not thinking then, you're doing, right? You're active in it. Very
because one thing
important.
is, you did everything what you could, and another thing is that if you work hard, then you have less things to worry about and to be anxious.
Sure.
The best
If there was
thing
something,
is get down to some work. Yes.
yeah. Well, sometimes
Mhm.
I use the word wisdom in two different spellings,
Mhm.
Wisdom
Mhm.
and Wisdumb.
Yes.
So the
With
dumb part of it is when we don't know something and we simply need to acquiesce to the moment
yes.
with the curiosity of how we can perform in it to our best. In this, we're coming up on close of our time, but I really appreciate this conversation. It's been wonderful, and I hope it's inspired you as well. In the future that we're creating together, not just you and I, but collectively,
Mhm.
what would you see as an indicator that things are coming together at a more organized and higher functional level?
Well, I think that generally, when you look at the history of humanity, I have impression, at least my feeling is that the quality of our life is increasing. And at least I wouldn't like to live in the past. I prefer present. And I think generally I'm on the positive side and I see the positive things. Actually, I read a book about this. I don't remember the title, but it was a book actually about the statistic that we usually think that things are getting worse, but actually the hard statistic is showing the opposite. I think it was factfulness or something like that. I can give you
Sure.
the link. But yeah, although some people like to say that, oh, everything is going to the worst, but actually that's not true. Because when you compare, like 50 or 100 years ago, only the richest people didn't have this quality which everyone has
Hmm.
today of life. So I generally see that everything is going in a good direction.
Sure.
That's at least how I see this. And yeah, and I think the best indicator, as you said, is the quality of life. You can see around what we have today, what can we do, You don't feel pain anymore when you go to the dentist. This is very basic stuff. You go to the pharmacy, is full of solutions for every pain you might have. So I generally think that this is good indicator, the quality of life for people, that it's getting better. But yes, that's
I would agree.
how I see
And
this.
in appreciation of those who are still a bit afraid of change, that the anxiety and the things that come up from that. But the
Mhm,
overall view is that things are getting better. We are more connected. Now, how are we going to integrate ourselves
mhm,
beyond the national borders and learn
mhm,
how to get along and establish a peaceful world that
mhm,
supports itself? Where we've got these outlying areas and populations that are either starving or living in squalor or, just not having good lives, right? Now, some of the indigenous tribes are still happy with what they're doing and they're totally fine. They don't want to change. We
mhm.
should leave them alone instead of trying to provide them everything that we think they need. They're not asking for it. Why do you want to give it to them? It's like a teenager, right? That you're trying to give wisdom to that isn't even
Mhm.
asking the questions yet. It
Yes.
just goes right over their head.
Yeah.
How, and yet, with this capacity that we have, the distribution systems that are in place, just not managed well, do you see that potential shifting with the use of AI and the way it moves beyond any boundaries to connect people?
Actually, I would say that this connectivity and AI is rather leading to everyone wanting the same, because we see, like you have Instagram now, you can compare life, uh, like people between different countries. So actually, I think that technology leads to this, that everyone wants the same.
Mm.
So
So what
we
I
are
hear you saying is don't fear it, be cautious
no,
maybe, but
no,
embrace
no,
it.
actually, no. It's just that you don't have. Yeah, it's more difficult to be content with less, as you said. That some people maybe don't want more, but actually, because we can compare our lives, due to the social media, I think everyone wants the same, or at least more people want the same.
We all want to love and be loved, right?
Yes, and also
Can we
material
make it
stuff.
that simple? Does that sound too, I mean, oftentimes it's like, well, that just sounds too woo-woo, right? And yet, that's really our core desire in life. We want to love and be loved. That's an expression, that's a feeling, that's a sense that we have that's beyond anything.
Well, actually, psychology has. When you say about the difference between people, different people want different things, and there are some basic things which love is important, but some people want also respect or safety. These are also very strong
Sure,
feelings. So
sure.
actually, we are not all the same. But I think also that
Well, I
contemporary
wasn't saying that
work,
love
huh?
is the same for everyone. Again, back like with the disc, right? We all have our preferences in the
Yes.
way we receive and give. It's when those
Mhm.
find compatibility with others that it's really important.
Yes, absolutely.
Elena, this has just been an amazing conversation. Is there anything else that came up while we were chatting that,
My assistant come for the
oh,
and she jumped on my desk. My little assistant. I'm sorry. No, I have
no,
nothing to
don't
add.
be sorry. I think that's a wonderful blessing that,
It's very sweet assistant. Yes, it's always
yeah,
improving my mood. So, of course, the last message I have is that if anyone is interested, should check our website, finalspark.com, if they want to know about the future of artificial intelligence. And thank you very much for this nice discussion. And um, and that's it. Thank you so much.
oh, you're very welcome. Thank you, Elena. And namaste and in catch. And thanks for sticking with us for
Namaste.
this episode of One World in a New World. And do please like, subscribe, share, visit planetarycitizens.net and download the book. I know you'll enjoy it. It explains things that we can see as far as our future is concerned and how we can all work together better. Again, I'm Zen Benefiel, your host. Thanks for showing up. I'll see you next time.